January 3rd, 2020. Baghdad, Iraq. 1 a.m. Somewhere above this road, invisible in the night sky, 3 American drones are circling. Each one is armed with 4 Hellfire missiles. Their operators are sitting at a base thousands of miles away, watching everything on a screen. The men in the vehicles below have no idea. One of those men is the second most powerful person in Iran, a general so feared, so influential, that some called him the most dangerous man in the Middle East. He has survived assassinations, wars, decades of enemies. He has outwitted the CIA, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the Iraqi government, sometimes all at once. Tonight, somebody finally knows exactly where he is, and what happens in the next 6 days will set the entire region on fire, and accidentally kill 176 innocent people who had absolutely nothing to do with any of it. January 3rd, 2019, exactly 1 year before his death. Qasem Soleimani is standing in the rubble of a liberated Syrian city, smiling for a photograph. He does this sometimes, poses, makes himself visible. It's a taunt to his enemies, to Washington, to Israel. I'm right here, come get me. For 22 years, he had commanded Iran's Quds Force, the elite covert operations branch of the Revolutionary Guard. While Iran's conventional military protected its borders, Soleimani's job was something far more expansive. He built Iran's shadow empire. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, Shia militias across Iraq, Assad's survival in Syria, the Houthi network in Yemen. Every proxy, every militia, every covert operation that extended Iran's reach across the Middle East ran through one man. Soleimani was considered the second most powerful person in Iran, subordinate only to Supreme Leader Khamenei, widely seen as Khamenei's right hand. The Pentagon estimated his militias were responsible for the deaths of hundreds of American soldiers in Iraq. The CIA had been tracking him for decades. And yet, he kept walking around, taking photographs, making himself visible. Because Soleimani understood something. Killing him would be an act of war. Every American president before Trump had the option. Every one of them passed. December 27th, 2019, 1 week before the assassination. An Iranian-backed militia fires rockets at a U.S. base in Kirkuk, Iraq. 1 American contractor is killed. Trump orders retaliatory airstrikes. 2 days later, supporters of that militia stormed the U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad. They breach the outer walls. They burn the reception area. They spray paint "Soleimani is our commander" on the walls. Trump watches it on television at Mar-a-Lago and says one word: enough. Senior officials later revealed that Trump had first authorized planning for Soleimani's elimination as far back as June 2019. The embassy attack was the final trigger. But here's the detail that makes this story extraordinary. The CIA had informants at Damascus airport who knew exactly when Soleimani's jet took off for Baghdad. Israeli intelligence helped confirm the flight details. U.S. spies already embedded at Baghdad airport tracked the plane's arrival in real time. 3 American drones were already circling overhead, each armed with 4 Hellfire missiles, with no fear of challenge in airspace completely dominated by the U.S. military. And on large screens, at the Pentagon, at the CIA, at the White House, officials watched live. An Iraqi militia leader walked up a set of stairs to greet Soleimani as he stepped off the plane. They embraced, they got into vehicles, they drove toward the airport exit. The drones followed. 1 a.m., the road outside Baghdad International Airport. The convoy is moving. The drones were MQ-9 Reapers, controlled remotely by operators at Creech Air Force Base in Nevada. The operators see everything. Then, the order comes through. Hellfire missiles, multiple, direct hits. Soleimani's body was identified at the scene by a ring he was known to wear. 5 Iraqi nationals and 4 other Iranian nationals were killed alongside him, including Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, the deputy head of the most powerful Iranian-backed militia in Iraq. The most powerful shadow general in the Middle East. Gone. Within minutes, Iranian state television interrupts its broadcast. Black banners appear. The supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, issues a single statement. A vigorous revenge is waiting for the criminals. The world holds its breath, and then something almost no one predicted happens next. January 8th, 2020, 5 days after the assassination, 2 a.m. Iran fires 22 ballistic missiles at 2 Iraqi air bases housing American and coalition forces. It is the most direct military strike Iran has ever launched against the United States. The world expects carnage. It expects retaliation. It expects war. But something strange happens. The missiles land, and almost no one dies. Iranian government officials had actually warned Iraqi leadership about the strikes in advance. The bases had time to shelter their personnel. It was simultaneously an act of revenge and, many analysts believe, a deliberate attempt to show force without triggering full-scale war. Some missiles malfunctioned, others seemed calibrated to avoid maximum casualties. Iran needed to be seen retaliating. Iran did not need to start a war it couldn't win. Trump tweets that all is well. He imposes new sanctions, no counterstrike. Crisis, apparently, averted. It is now 6 a.m. in Tehran, and at Imam Khomeini International Airport, a Boeing 737 is preparing for departure. Flight PS752, Ukraine International Airlines, bound for Kyiv with 176 people on board. Students returning to university in Canada after the holidays, young couples, professors, children. 138 of the 167 passengers were on their way to Canada. 55 were Canadian citizens. At 6:12 a.m., the plane takes off. It climbs normally. The pilots are calm. Air traffic control sees nothing unusual. What no one on that plane knows, what no one on that plane could possibly know, is that Iran's air defense units have been on maximum alert since the missile strikes 4 hours earlier. IRGC operators are at their stations, convinced an American counterstrike is coming. Their radar picks up something. An operator makes a decision. The IRGC had targeted flight PS752 after mistakenly identifying it as an American cruise missile. A missile operator with a misaligned guidance system fired without authorization. The first missile likely hit the plane, but the unit, still tracking the object, fired again. All 176 passengers and crew were killed, among them 15 children. For 3 days, Iran lied. Iranian authorities claimed mechanical failure caused the crash. State television broadcast experts explaining why a missile strike was impossible. But video footage was already circulating on Iranian social media. Locals had filmed it. You could see the missile hit the plane in the air. Western intelligence agencies confirmed it within 24 hours. Prime Minister Trudeau said it was likely an Iranian missile. The evidence was overwhelming. Iran kept lying for 3 days, even as the families of the dead waited for answers. Then, the footage became impossible to deny. On January 11th, Iran's government admitted the IRGC had shot down the aircraft. The head of the IRGC said, "Never in my life have I felt so ashamed." The streets of Tehran erupted, not in grief for Soleimani this time, but in rage at the government that had killed its own people and then lied about it. Students at universities refused to walk on American flag murals painted on the ground, an old revolutionary tradition. They walked around them. Supreme Leader Khamenei called it a bitter tragedy, and then defended the IRGC anyway. A prosecutor in the military trial later told the families of victims, "We did it, and it was the right thing to do." 5 days. One assassination planned in secret by two governments who told no one. A chain reaction that crossed 4 countries, 2 continents, and ended with 176 people who had nothing to do with any of it, falling out of the sky over the city they called home. No one who made the decisions that week lost a child. Not the officials in Washington who had been planning the strike 6 months, not the intelligence officers in Tel Aviv who confirmed the flight details, not the commanders in Tehran who kept civilian air traffic open during a war alert, not the politicians who spent years squeezing Iran's economy until ordinary people couldn't breathe. They went home that night. The students didn't. The students who died, they were trying to build something. Degrees, careers, futures. They were the exact people any country needs most. The ones who go away to learn and come back to build. The ones who carry a country's hope in their carry-on luggage. They never came back.
Here is what doesn't make the news cycle. The sanctions that strangled Iran's economy for years before this, they weren't felt by Iran's government. They were felt by the nurse who couldn't get imported medicine for her patients, the engineer who watched his salary become worthless, the young couple who had been trying to save enough to leave and were on that plane because they finally had. The drone strike didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened at the end of a very long chain of proxy wars, regime changes, economic warfare, and decades of decisions made by men in rooms far from the consequences. Peace doesn't get made in those rooms. It gets broken there. Canada did something the powerful countries wouldn't. While Washington moved on and Tel Aviv stayed silent, Canada showed up. It named January 8th a National Day of Remembrance. It created 176 scholarships, one for every single person who died, so that the futures those students were flying home to build would be built by someone else in their name. Soleimani was a complex man in an impossible situation, in a region that has been on fire for longer than most of its people have been alive. The people who ordered his death knew what would follow. They made that choice anyway, from a safe distance, and the bill was paid by a 16-year-old girl 3 days from her birthday, and a mother that a son in Toronto never stopped waiting for. The question this story leaves, the one that doesn't have a clean answer, is this: when does the cycle stop? And who decides it's their turn to be the first to put down the weapon? Because the families of Flight PS752 have been asking that question every single day for 5 years. And so far, the people with the weapons haven't answered. If you're still here, thank you. Seriously, in a world built to steal your attention every 3 seconds, you gave me yours. New stories every single week. Hit subscribe. You have no idea what's coming next.